Talking about some recruiting here, Jake, as Eli Holstein has announced his, from Zachary, has announced his commitment to the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I got to say, the place where my brain first went, well, a couple of places. First off, Holstein's story is very interesting, right? He was at St. Thomas More along with Walker Howard. Could not beat out Howard, left. But to give you an idea of just how highly he was thought of, you got to remember, Coach O offered Eli Holstein before he had ever even thrown a varsity pass. Like, you had never seen him throw a pass in a varsity game, and he had an LSU scholarship offer. Think about that.
I mean, Walker Howard kind of the same path, because wasn't Holstein's brother?
Yes, Holstein's older brother was the quarterback at St. Thomas More before Howard. And so pretty impressive, right, that Howard wins that job and Holstein has to go find his fate elsewhere. That probably burned Holstein a little bit, I would imagine. And he went to Zachary and he dominated. He has done well. He is a great quarterback. But again, I talked about it earlier in the show, Jake, what I love about sports are the narratives, right? And right now, the saga of Holstein versus Howard is only beginning. Right. I mean, it's already motivated him to go to another school, find his fortune elsewhere. Now he once again is going to another school, basically saying, okay, yes, I'm a Louisiana kid, born and raised, but you threw your lot in with Walker Howard. You believed him to be the best, and you have forced my hand to go elsewhere. I am now going to Alabama, and I will come back, and I will get Walker Howard. And what's wild to me, Jake, is there's already so much pressure on Walker Howard to live up to that billing. He was kind of heralded as the savior in a lot of ways. Remember when the transition from O to Brian Kelly was going down, the priority number one was keeping Howard. And then Howard worked to keep the class together, right? And we all talk about how he's been a leader throughout the recruiting process, et cetera, et cetera. Like, Walker Howard is the prince that was promised in a lot of ways. But lost in the shuffle because of that, or kind of ignored, was a guy like Eli Holstein. And now it's kind of flipped where Walker Howard will be judged for how he eventually does against Eli Holstein in LSU versus Alabama. Only Walker Howard's going to be the one trying to punch up. Like, Holstein's walking into a much more stable environment, a much better program, a much better team. And yet if Walker Howard loses, everybody's going to be like, oh, well, LSU should have gone with Holstein in the end. So, like, the potential, and they got to win the jobs, right? They got to win the jobs. They both got to play out. But they're both very good. I think there's a good chance they will. But the potential that these two will be dueling each other for the next 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, whenever they start, it has storylines written all over it.
It does, and not even mentioning Holstein was committed to Texas A&M for a long time, and we talked a lot yesterday about Texas A&M and how much money the recruits are truly getting, and I know we'll talk about that.
And we'll go back to that. Yeah, I got a little more information there, Hen.
So I know we will talk about that, but this never felt like it was, LSU here for Holstein because of what you just laid out, right? Walker Howard is there. He's the quarterback. You moved Zachary. You take over there. Now Walker certainly is at LSU, and you're not going to go there. So this doesn't feel like a battle that LSU was ever going to be in on. And it is wild, the fact that you have two quarterbacks like that within the state. Arch Manning as well is sitting there as the number one quarterback in the state, certainly, and probably the number one player overall in this class. Two Louisiana quarterbacks, and you never, ever felt like LSU had any chance, no matter who was recruiting them, no matter how well you did on the field. Because once Walker Howard signed with LSU, it felt like Holstein was out. Yeah. And then obviously we know the dynamic between the Mannings and LSU. So it's not many times can you, as LSU, never feel like you're even remotely in. Like you don't even get to put your foot in the door with a recruit. Yeah,
I feel like some of the and you're right. So it's like it's a weird thing where arguably you could say there were just forces at work like working against LSU where you were never going to get two of these three guys. Because again, you clearly made the decision for Howard over Holstein. So like you did make that choice, but on the Arch thing, like you said, there's all kinds of pasts and kind of a historical baggage there that holds you off. I mean, just look at what the Manning family has always done in regards of where they go to college. Also, now the statute of limitations up, I do have a great little story about a little friction caused between the Mannings and LSU, where the LSU quarterbacks supposed to go to the Peyton Manning passing. I mean, in the Manning Pass Academy. Of course they are, right? You got to go kiss the ring, pay tribute, as one does. And Jake Peets stopped the quarterbacks from going last minute, held them back, basically saying, "Look, Arch doesn't play for us. You know, we got games to win, we got things to do." When O found out about this, let's just say he was none too pleased, especially because he found out directly from Archie, the Godfather, who was none too pleased. So, as if you weren't maybe already frustrated with Jake Peets enough, just know that he helped to further the divide between the Mannings and LSU. But it is wild, Jake, that you will have, LSU right now might have more in-state quarterback talent than it's ever had between these three quarterbacks, or at least near the top of where it's ever had. And it looks like not only are you're not going to get two of the three, which, that makes sense because quarterbacks don't want to stack up on top of each other, but you will be going against these guys directly, most likely. I mean, certainly Eli Holstein at Alabama, but whether Arch, and by the way, Arch has announced that he's going to visit UGA, Bama, and Texas in June. You have potential to play all three of those teams. And so I talked about the added pressure on Walker Howard. That is the horse that LSU has backed. And now he has that pressure to outperform these guys, taking over a team that has been sub 500 the last 2 years. So it's a fascinating kind of burden for Howard to take on, even if it's kind of outside of his control in a lot of ways, and only time will tell. And there's a quote from Holstein, Jake, that just gives you an idea of what Brian Kelly is fighting against. And it again reinforces what a kind of bold, chaotic kind of what a bold move it was to come down here in the first place. Here's a quote for Holstein why he committed to Alabama. Quote, "Bama consistently recruited me for a long time, and Bama is Bama. They produce great athletes, great football players, most recently, great quarterbacks." Here's the important part. The last three starting quarterbacks they had are starting in the NFL now. This last quarterback who won the Heisman is probably going to be a top 5 NFL pick, maybe the number 1 pick. I mean, that is hard to recruit against. Do you think, given that pitch right there, we just talked a lot about how LSU couldn't land two of these guys because, of course, you can't. Could Bama land two? Do you think they would land Eli and Arch?
No, I don't think so. And also going back to his quote, it is wild kind of where you're at. The last 3 Bama quarterbacks starting in the NFL, last 3 starting LSU quarterbacks, one is Joe Burrow. Obviously, another one's possibly going to start for Auburn, and another one's possibly going to start for A&M.
Yeah, I guess with Max Johnson, not as you're right, not as impressive, but hey, we got some quarterback. We got some quarterback.
I'm not even trying to make it impressive. I'm just saying it's kind of wild where LSU is and where their quarterbacks that have started and where they're at right now. But no, I don't think Arch would go to Bama and have Holstein there as well. When you look at the top quarterback ratings, Arch, as I mentioned, is number 1. Eli Holstein in the country is number 8. It'd be hard for me to fathom both of those players going there. Now, Clemson also has a top 8 quarterback committed to them. And so when you look at it, Texas does not have one. So does that give Texas the leg up? Don't know. Obviously, Tennessee's got a very highly touted quarterback committed to them, the one that we've talked about possibly getting millions of dollars before.
Allegedly signed a deal that over 4 years could pay him $8 million, up to $8 million.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations. LSU... So
you're committed to that kid, right? LSU threw their lot in with Walker Howard. Yeah. Tennessee really threw their lot in.
So you've got 2 players in the state that, as I mentioned, never felt like LSU had remotely any chance, no matter what they did, no matter who did it. But also, LSU's really high on Dante Moore from Detroit. He was here for the spring football game, and it's going to be a little different as far as the pipeline. Let's remember that.
You're saying a more national pipeline.
Yes, Brian Kelly and Polian and the staff, they've done this. This is what they've done. That's why we always give you the stat. Only 2 of the players drafted from Notre Dame during Brian Kelly's tenure were from the state of Indiana.
That's crazy.
This is what they've done. They've done national recruiting searches, certainly. Not to say you don't pay attention to Louisiana. You certainly do. Louisiana is Louisiana. But in this case, in this scenario, when you have 2 top quarterbacks, you're never going to be in on either one of them. You do have the ability to go elsewhere and find a top-tier quarterback. And so that's going to be favorable for this current staff.
All right, when we get back here on OTB, look, if you want to get involved, youtube.com/1045 ESPN, you can put your comments in the chat there. What do you think about the Arch news on who he'll be visiting in June? How do you feel about Holstein committing to Alabama? Is that a slide against LSU? Is it just the reality of the situation?